Combat Evolved was meant to be a one-off game. What we now know as the first trilogy in one of the biggest gaming franchises to date was originally meant to be an open-world third-person shooter for Mac and PC. I can tell you that only 2 of those things ended up fucking happening. And after a shit ton of changes, including cut content, as well as the switch to being an Xbox exclusive, Halo sold, with no other better way to explain it, Halo sold a metric fuck ton of money, surprising everybody but Bungie most of all. So they did what any company would do and ordered a sequel, because, well, money! Also because so much was cut from Combat Evolved that the team wanted to not just use that stuff for a new game, but take the entirety of Halo 1 and triple everything. Rebuilding the game engine, changing the physics engine, pushing the original Xbox as far as it could go graphically, including the usage of real-time lighting, but then scrapping that shit halfway through development, and expanding on the story where CE was lacking. However, as Halo fans would know, by doing all of this at once, they also tripled development issues, including months of overtime, Alex Seropian, Bungie's co-founder, just dipping mid-development, even more cut content, as well as the infamous Halo 2 E3 demo that was completely fabricated. Boy, Halo 2 really was ahead of its time. I hope people know that I'm like fucking joking and not just shitting on game developers. This wasn't coming from a place of hubris or terrible management, but from uncontrollable and raw ambition. And as inspiring as that is, that doesn't mean that the development process was sunshine and rainbows all the time. Multiplayer designer Chris Carney summed it up best by simply saying, "It was the most brutal development effort we've gone through." So after what can only be explained as a fucking tsunami of issues, Halo 2 released on November 9th, 2004, and very quickly became the best-selling original Xbox game ever made, raking in well over 8 million copies sold. Blah blah blah, and kick that journalistic bullshit to the curb. What about the actual game? Show me the Carfax, damn it! As somebody who never had an Xbox growing up, going into Halo 2, all I knew was hearsay. I knew about the dual wielding, which was honestly the part of the game I hyped up the most in my mind, a narrative that's on paper, similar to Metal Gear Solid 2 and Empire, it being really pretty for an OG Xbox game, and Cortana begins her evolution of becoming more and more naked? That's gonna become a shit show as I keep playing these games. So while I knew how legendary of a game Halo 2 was, I still had pretty mid expectations, mostly based off of my experience with CE, which I replayed for the sake of this video. I expected a pretty fun, competent game that quickly gets fucking repetitive. If I can just be completely honest, I was pretty uncomfortable with making this video for a little while, because I was afraid I just didn't like Halo, and the first time I played Halo 2, I really didn't fucking like it. I got up to the mission where you kill the real heretic and I was just not feeling it, so I put my original Xbox copy on the shelf and I called it a fucking day. Luckily, I took some time off, came back, bought the PC release, which has nothing to do with this besides preferences, played through the game, and realized that Bungie ended up creating one of the best FPS games I've ever played, and by doing so, saved me from the comment section. Yeah, if you couldn't tell by the footage of me mentioning it literally 30 seconds ago, what do you have, goldfish brain? I am playing this through the Master Chief Collection on PC, which is a port of the Anniversary remake for the original Xbox One release. That sentence just felt like one of those pictures that replicates what it's like to have a stroke and has the caption, "Name one thing in this picture." 2 Anniversary does the same thing as the first game, where you can switch in between the classic look as well as the new graphics. The new look isn't so convoluted and messy like the first Anniversary was, which is a huge plus. I still don't like how some of the visual design of the remakes juxtaposes with the original's look. Plus, Blur Studios cutscenes, while beautiful, look overly lit and really moist. It looks like a never-ending commercial for a game. I just think that there's a way to obtain this level of fidelity while still making it feel like it fits the rest of the game. This really isn't that big of a deal, it's just a small nitpick on my part. Thankfully, since this remake isn't based off of some shitty port, those original Xbox visuals still maintain their look. Wait, okay, fine, I'll stop rambling and talk about the fucking game already, I'm sorry. Shit. By far, my favorite improvement over Combat Evolved is this game's narrative. As much as its setting and tone was interesting, it did often feel like a pretty standard FPS from a story standpoint. Its setup was intriguing, and the twist revealing the Flood was still pretty great, but beyond that, the rest of the story was pretty surface level. From the opening seconds alone, Halo 2 cements itself as not just more evolved than its predecessor, but a big deal in its own right. Instead of immediately opening with Master Chief on another cool mission, 2 opens with the Supreme Commander of the Covenant, the main antagonist of the series so far, being labeled as a heretic for not managing to stop Master Chief from destroying Halo in the first game, which to the UNSC was just a doomsday device, but to the Covenant, it was sacred. It's a really simple idea on paper, but it actually ends up achieving multiple things at once. It fleshes out the Halo universe through setting and dialogue beyond what little we saw in the first game. It shows that there are consequences for what Chief did to the other side of the war. It shows the extent of how dangerous and zealot-like the Covenant are, and it sets up the dichotomy of our 2 protagonists. And all of this is from like a 10-minute prologue? But the best part is that 2's storytelling, as well as its pace, doesn't let up until that cliffhanger punches you in the gut. From the immediate invasion on Earth, to the revelation of another Halo, as well as the rest of the insane shit that this game does, Halo 2 has like an actually interesting story. It made politics and war palatable. What fucking timeline am I in? Cause I know damn well that it ain't mine. It's a story that gives you just enough to keep up with what's happening, whilst allowing you to focus on the conflict at hand, aka shoot big alien thing. It's quite possibly the perfect meld of narrative and lore, which is kind of important for a sci-fi game. The large cast of characters are easy to like, both due to their banter amongst each other, as well as the amazing talent providing their voices. Keith David, Kevin Michael Richardson, Jen Taylor, Stephen Downes, Robin Atkin Downes, no relation as far as I know, Ron fucking Perlman, and David Cross? Who the fuck was he in this game? If I missed somebody, then I'm sorry. There's just so many great people in this damn game. I just love this story so much. A game like this could have easily ruined a character like the Arbiter. He could have very well been someone who isn't like the other elites who refuses to kill humans, which makes the audience easier to sympathize with him, but no. Chief doesn't stop murdering the Covenant, and the same goes for the Arbiter and the UNSC, before and after they meet each other. Instead of taking the easy way out, 2 makes you acknowledge the fact that this is a war, and you know what they say.
War never changes.
Go watch my Fallout 4 video, you dum-dum. All of that tripling everything energy that went into the narrative also bleeds into the gameplay, despite that being the best part of the first game. The Mad Lads somehow, I don't know how they did it, but they made it better. I can't really put my finger on exactly why, but revisiting Combat Evolved made me realize how okay the campaign really is. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good game, one that broke the mold of what a console shooter could be, but that doesn't change the fact that it's really boring to play after your initial run. The biggest issue with multiplayer games that also have a campaign is that it can often feel like somebody grabbed a map, added enemies, scripted explosions, a couple cutscenes, and called it a fucking day. While CE's campaign had way more work put into it than that, it still, in my eyes, didn't live up to the potential that it could have been. Now 2, through its superior story and improved gameplay, keeps a better balance of these aspects. As I mentioned in the story portion of this video, its pace is very non-stop, yet it still has some quiet sections to keep that same vibe that the series has established at this point. To be fair, Halo third acts can get pretty tiring, and this time around the issue isn't repetition or anything. The final missions in 2 are phenomenal to play through. My problem is that the game is pretty long in the tooth, clocking into about 8 or 9 hours. As an RPG fan, just reading that sentence in my script just hurts my blood. My blood? What the fuck? Honestly, the entire game is still fun at the end of the day, so this is a really moot point. Something that, while I mentioned in my video on CE, yet pretty much glossed over, is how the simplified gameplay forces you to adapt. This isn't Doom or any other shooter for that matter. You can't run into places shooting anywhere and everywhere expecting to hit something. 2 also trims a lot of the bullshit from CE. No battery on the flashlight, no timed warthog section, and no health bar, leaving only the rechargeable shield. It streamlines the gameplay to its core elements while maintaining and expanding on the soul of the original game. Unlike some other franchise that I know, I promise that that's the last time I plug my Fallout 4 video. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have no fucking clue what else to say. I just really like Halo 2. I guess the music is amazing. Obviously, everybody knows that by this point. Martin O'Donnell has served his country well by helping to create an entire generation of people who love video game music just as much as standard albums. But yeah, usually I have a whole list of things to mention, whether it be things that I love or loathe with all of my being, but not this time. You know, in psychology, there's a theory. This is relevant. This isn't me just rambling. I have a purpose with this. There's a theory about something called a flow state, discovered by psychologist this man. I am so fucking sorry. His theory being that on a graph with challenge level vertically and your skill level horizontally, if both are maxed out, then the subject will experience flow, or more commonly known as being in the zone. And somehow, despite being on normal difficulty, I was constantly out of flow state with Halo 2, which just speaks to how fucking majestic this game is. And there it is, guys, another one of my daily attempts at trying to sound smart. I legitimately had to go digging around my square brain to come up with anything that I had to say in this video. Not because I had no material, as you guys seen, I have enough shit to ramble on about, so while my reviewing skills may be pretty subpar, if I got one person interested in Halo 2, then I've succeeded. But the problem is that this game is just so satisfying that I immediately go into caveman mode when I boot it up. It's an issue. It's actually on sale right now on Steam for only $5, along with the rest of the series, up until July 8th. So let's just hope that this video came out on time. So, my children of the corn, we now have 2 installments in the bag, leaving only a bajillion more to get through. And I have to admit, while it may be pretty immature to say this right now, after 2, I think that I'm a fan of Halo. From the moment that I installed the game, I knew that I wouldn't play anything else until I completed it. And after I saw that after credits scene, I immediately began playing it again with infinite ammo because Resident Evil has ruined me. I just can't wait until I get to come back to this and take a look at the next game in the series. And yes, you saw that right, ODST is next because of chronological order even though 3 released first. Fucking fight me! Well, my neighbors just called the cops on me. Not for screaming bloody murder in the wee hours of the night for 3 hours, but for playing Halo in the wrong order. Anyways, that's all I got to say about Halo 2. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys whenever I'm released. Later, kids. Have a good night. We're playing ODST next. Fuck the law. Hey, cops in my area. It's a bit. I'm kidding, I'm joking.
What's it like working with Marty? That's a good question.
Joe? Oh, well, I mean, it's the best.
Working with Marty is an effort in patience and restraint.
He's hilarious, he's funny, he's sharp.
He gets to bitch like nobody's business about how much work he has and how little time there is.
We work together really well.
The two